Hello, my friends, and welcome back to another powerful episode of the Creative Channel podcast by MMG Design. You're listening to episode entry 44 of the show. I'm so excited to be sharing this one with you guys, as I am every single week. Before we get into it, I'm going to announce the exciting guest for this episode. Please do us a favor and hit the like button, subscribe, and if you're on Spotify, leave a 5-star review or a rating. It takes just a few seconds, and it makes a world of difference to me. We're closing in on the 1 year mark of uploading every single Tuesday at 8 a.m. So, for a quick thank you for all the value and all the guests that we've had on so far, I would really, really appreciate that. So, I'm gonna keep bringing on exciting guests to the MMG Design Creative Channel podcast, and this one is no exception. Today's guest for entry number 44 is the one and only Mr. Steve Schramm. Steve Schramm is a course creator. He's owner of Subscription Web Design Podcast and online course and community. He is a Christian Bible and gospel storyteller, the owner of NorthMac Services, a boutique web design agency offering web design and online marketing for coaches and educators. He currently resides in Statesville, North Carolina, with his lovely wife and children, and he operates a small but mighty remote team of borderless talent to deliver high-quality websites and marketing. He's been in business for a long time, and Steve and I met in Josh Hall's online community, Web Designer Pro, a great community where you can learn from other people. And Steve has really been a mentor for me. We kind of touched on it here in the beginning, but Steve and I talked for the first time, it's like 6 or 7 months ago, and he really helped me out with my business, approaching pricing, finding your niche, kind of nailing in on the services you offer. And I mean, Steve helped me out a lot, and so I'm and very much indebted to Steve. And I hope that some of the value that he brought to me in that first conversation and this one as well carries over and kind of helps you guys in your business, whether you're in web design or any type of service industry, how you can get creative with your pricing to leverage your services in the best way possible and ultimately add the most value to your clients. Expect to learn in this episode what lean marketing is and how to leverage it to scale your business, how to position yourself as a trusted partner and not just a one-time vendor getting off that client conveyor belt, as we are also way too familiar with, a lot of us. Structuring your business in a way that aligns with your values and desired lifestyle. So, this concept of beginning with the end in mind, and exciting business plans for Steve and I for the future, and things that Steve's excited about because he has a great litmus test on a great sort of litmus and pulse on everything that's going on um, in industry and pricing and agency models. If you're a web designer, or if you are more interested in engaging in subscription design pricing, it's a great model to implement, as you guys will see we talk about a lot. But if you're a web designer, head over to subscriptionwebdesign.com and check out Steve's 5 pricing models, training, and contract template completely for free. I can tell you this is one of the most valuable lead magnets that I have downloaded, and it apart from this conversation is basically a lot of the stuff that Steve's talked about, and is a ton of value in one simple package, so you can start to implement the subscription web design model in your own business. So without further ado, thank you guys for tuning in. This is entry number 44 of the Creative Journal by MMG Design. I'm so excited that you're here and to share today's guest, Mr. Steve Schramm. So, Steve, I have a lot of kind of like high-level topics, but I would like you to introduce yourself and kind of get your backstory. We met, so for the audience, kind of a context and backstory. We met in Web Designer Pro, and we had a introductory call, like I think maybe 4 or 5 months ago, when we actually chatted for the first time. And I remember because I was at work at my full-time job, which I'm no longer at. On my phone, and I remember that call very well because from the outside, I wasn't really sure kind of what to think of subscription web design, your services, and I had seen you in the group and stuff. But after listening to your show a lot and seeing everything that you're about, I kind of got to really look up to you. So first of all, I want to thank you for being here today, and I want to give you, a platform to share your story and tell us what you're all about.
Sure. Well, it's always an honor. I appreciate that. I love helping people that I see myself in. I see the me from 5 to 10 years ago, right? In people like you, and I really look up to you. When I first saw you, I have to admit, my first impression was, boy, he's got a really deep voice. He really doesn't look like his voice is that deep. And then people look at me, and their first impression of me is usually, boy, he really doesn't look like his voice should be like sounding like a girl. So I'm envious of your voice, and I'm also envious of your hair. But I'm grateful for the opportunity to be here. Yeah. So for me, what I teach, what I basically do is help web designers build recurring revenue. And while most people who talk about the recurring revenue from a web design standpoint actually are talking about like add-on services like SEO and paid advertising and things like that, I actually teach recurring income through the web design services in itself. And so I actually have coined the term subscription web design. I've been doing it since about 2015 when there was nobody out there already doing this, or if there were, they were few and far between. There was certainly nobody teaching you to do it. And I had to kind of make it up as I go along. So I have a lot of battle scars, a lot of arrows in my back, as the old saying about pioneers goes. But I've learned a few things, and I try to help people with that on my podcast, Subscription Web Design. My website, subscriptionwebdesign.com. You can find our coaching program there, and I've got a course available too if you're not interested in a coaching program. But I just want to help people build a recurring web design business, because the reality is most web designers are stuck in the feast or famine. And most web designers go from client to client, and what they end up doing is they work, they grind to find the client, and then they become so busy with that client work and so happy that they just got one that they do all the work. They don't do any marketing. They don't do any sales. And so then the income dries up because the work is done, and they have to go back to what I call the client conveyor belt. They go back to the conveyor belt and try to pick off another client, which takes time, effort, resources, money. And then they find one, and then they do it all over again. And they're in this vicious cycle of always having to find new clients. The way that I look at it is, what if you could take a client and bring them into your world, but then that client, number one, paid you every month forever. And number two, if you could actually take that client and over time sell them into higher and higher levels of recurring revenue services, like some of those other things, SEO, email marketing, things of that nature. And so that's what I teach people how to do, is create a web design business that features recurring income, and then go from there by ascending those clients into services and products that they need to grow their business and actually become a long-term partner with them. So that's a little bit of the snapshot of where that got started. And I'll just give you the brief idea that led to wanting to do this. Is I had a business mentor who taught me that if you can get a customer who will come back and pay you every month, month after month, year after year, then that's the holy grail, right? I mean, because most businesses struggle to get a customer once, and then they have to keep working to bring that customer back in the door. But if you can get a customer one time and be paid by that customer forever, then you can build a much more stable business. And what you end up with is the kind of stable recurring revenue, the kind of income that you're used to getting from a full-time job, but the freedom and flexibility of being an entrepreneur and a business owner. And so I think that it takes a mindset shift. There's a lot to it, but once you get that down, it makes a lot of sense. And that business mentor owned a recording studio. That's where I used to work. My background is in music and recording and production. And what he used to do is he would bring in a customer, a client, and he'd say, okay, when you come record with us, we're going to manufacture for you enough CDs that you can sell at $15 a piece to make back the investment on your recording. So let's say somebody came in and we charged them $1,500. We would give them 100 CDs that they could sell for $15 a piece. And that would allow them to make back their investment. And if they just put that money away and came back every year and did a new CD, his promise was that they would never go up on the price. So all they had to do was save up $1,500 one time, pay that first time, and then it was free every year after that. But
Mm-hmm.
the business, of course, got to make, the $1,500 every year as they would come back. So I took that and I applied some of that thinking to web design. And 8 years later, here we are today.
Yeah, man, I love that. First of all, and we'll share all the links to everything you mentioned earlier, your show and your website and everything.
Mm.
But yeah, because as a creative, that's super appealing, and that's kind of what brought me into the Steve sphere, because you from the outside it seems like, and you mentioned it, as the client conveyor belt. Like I was always about, and I think objectively we know, like in the back of our heads, like a lot of the audiences, creative business owners, and you start to think of yourself over and over as just like a punching bag sometimes, or just a vending machine. And you, in the back of your head, like we read business books, we know what a profitable business model looks like. It looks something more like a SaaS, a recurring revenue model. And you actually had a podcast about this recently where we talked about how the SaaS model and how it kind of relates to subscription web design. And we'll link that one below too, because that was a really good episode. I actually made a post about that one too because I resonated with it so much. But um,
Awesome.
what so to me, you strike me as someone that like was really trying to rebel against the fact of like the traditional model, and so you made something for yourself. And can you kind of go into, and you gave like some of the examples of your background in recording and stuff, but when it comes to web design and creative specifically, I think um, it's so appealing because it lets you kind of you know have a better business model while still doing the things that you love. You don't have to go into creating a product like in the past. You might have to freelance to kind of build a career, and then on the back of that you have to work that into an audience or a product which you can then monetize in a much more scalable way. But this kind of allows you to get a head start on that, to productizing your services, and it also emphasizes a long-term relationship with clients, which is something that I've learned even in the beginning is much more valuable than
Oh,
having
yeah.
to repeatedly sign on new ones. So can you kind of talk about what led to you applying that to web design and what you were doing, and how you kind
Sure.
of fleshed out that concept over time?
Well, you said a lot there. There's a lot I could say. So let me do my best to kind of
Floor is
to kind of
yours,
catch
man.
up. Yeah, no,
Mhm.
I appreciate that. Productization, maybe take a note on that real quick. That's something I want to revisit, and come back to is the idea of productization. For me, it was a couple things. So the initial reason why I decided to go into this model, aside from learning from my business mentor that residual or recurring income is the way to go, um, was when I got back into web design. I had actually taken about I guess, a 4 or 5 year break from doing that kind of work. And I was looking for something. I had a full time job, and I was looking for something to build up my business on the side. And I set sort of a 5 year goal, which, by the way, I'm happy to report that I made it. I made that goal. I quit my job, um, 2 weeks before my son started school, and or actually, I quit my job about a week before he started school, and then my last day of work was about a week after he started school, and that was my goal, and I did it. And but when I got back into web design, my thought was, oh my goodness, there's no way anyone is going to charge me thousands, or I'm going to be able to charge anyone thousands of dollars for a website. Like that's what all the gurus at that time were talking about, right? Oh, you got to
Yeah.
charge at least $3,500 for a website, and I'm like, $3,500? Like, there's no way anyone's going to give me. And of course,
Yeah.
I was also a small thinker. My mindset has changed a lot,
Yeah.
but I was
So I
also
was gonna
thinking
say it's all
small.
about the minds. Yeah, it's all about the mindset, man. That's what it is.
Yeah, it is. It is. But to be honest, I'm grateful for it because it was that mindset that led me to, as a creative,
Mhm.
creatively think about a solution. And the solution I came up with was, well, you know what? I'm not sure that anybody, I literally remember the first time I had this thought. I was standing in the break room at my full time job, and I thought, you know what? I don't think anyone's going to give me thousands of dollars, at least not right now, to build a website for them. But I bet they'd give me $75 a month. You know what I mean? I bet. And at that
Mhm.
time, the subscription revolution, today there's a little bit more subscription fatigue. and things like that. But in 2015, when I was first, noodling on this stuff, the subscription revolution was in full swing and everything was moving to subscriptions. And so it just made sense.
Mhm. Mhm.
And the long and short of it is I validated. Sure enough, I found someone to give me $75 a month. I found someone eventually to give me $100 a month. I then found someone to give me 224 a month, and then I found people to give me 297 a month. And at this point, just in full transparency, the most I've been able to get somebody to give me is 4,500 a month. And so
Wow.
it started out very small, but grew over time as my mindset grew, as my offerings grew, and the things that that we started to do for clients. And so, but it started from that place of like scarcity thinking, and just not being sure of myself. And ironically, it was that led to creating this whole business model. And here's why it's great. It's great because most creatives hate selling. I don't know if
Mhm.
you resonate with that, but a
Mhm.
lot of the creative types are, man, they just want to do great work. They just want to do great work, and they want to put it out there, and they don't want to feel like they have to resort to some of these tactics like urgency and scarcity to get people in the door. Now, I have lots of
Mhm.
thoughts about that, but one thing that I've learned is changing human behavior takes a lot longer than figuring out how to work alongside human behavior. This is one reason why I like, if you've ever heard of the profit first method, for structuring your business, Mike
Mhm.
McAllowitz, he talks about, yeah, there's all kinds of things and tools that you can use to sort of like try to change your behavior. But at the end of the day, you're always going to default back to like checking the bank account balance, because that's the most objective measure. Like everything
Mhm.
else that you lay on to your bank account to try to like creatively shift money. And by the way, I'm a huge budgeter, so I'm a fan of some of those things. But
Mhm.
he's right that human nature is you're always going to look at the most objective thing, and the most objective thing is the number that's in the bank account. And so what he does is he splits it out into separate bank accounts. Well, not to rabbit trail down that, we'll just use that as an example of, I think if you can structure your business to work in such a way that fits with human nature, then you're going to be at an advantage. And for me,
Mhm.
what that looks like is, well, if you're a creative and you're the kind of person who doesn't like to have to go out and dig and grind and pound the pavement and try to find clients, constantly, then there are ways that you can structure your business. And I'm not saying that you don't have to work to get clients. You always have to work to get clients. But I'm amazed at when you have less pressure, which is what this subscription model allows you to do, is that it gives you less pressure. You don't have to take on bad clients. You don't have to feel like you're not going to be able to pay your bills next month. I mean, I haven't had to worry about whether my bills are paid for a long time. Now, am I filthy stinking rich? No, I'm just being completely honest with you. I am not filthy stinking rich. But we have a good, stable, solid business that has repeatedly and consistently paid the bills for my family for many years now. And I have
Mhm.
every reason to believe we'll continue doing that. Now, what more could you want? What more could a creative want than to be able to wake up every day, do work they love, and provide for their family? I mean,
Mhm.
that's the holy grail. And the subscription model, yes, it takes time to build up to, and I have some strategies for how to help work up that financial runway, I call it. Um, but once you have it in place, to be able to know within a pretty reasonable degree of certainty how much money is going to come in next month, boy, now there is freedom in that. And you can focus more on doing great work and sharing great work in order to get clients, rather than cold calling and hustling and grinding and all of those things. So I
Mhm.
just think that the subscription model fits better with not only human nature and like how creatives want to work and get business, but it's also better for clients. And this is something that takes a while sometimes for my students to really internalize and understand. But the reality is a website is not a product. A website's not a product. A website is a service, right?
Mhm.
A website is a service that we perform, not a product that we sell. And most creatives think about a website like a house. You build a house and then maybe you sell them a maintenance plan to keep the house from falling down. Not how we think about it. We think about the website almost more like a living organism, because it is. It's in the middle of an environment, and it has to respond and react to whatever Mark Zuckerberg wakes up, and maybe he wakes up on the wrong side of the bed and makes some big change, and so the website has to be able to respond to that. And the people over at Google, they're changing stuff all the time, and so you need to have somebody in your corner. And frankly, your business changes all the time. Businesses add staff and lose staff all the time. They have specific offers for holidays. They have things that they need to change.
Mhm.
And so it's actually better for the client that you have an ongoing relationship as their web designer, as their web developer, whatever you call yourself. It's better for the client that you have an ongoing relationship with them. And so once you can internalize that, well, it becomes all the more easy to sell. As long as you're trying to sell something to clients that you're not fully convinced in your own mind is right for them, you're going to struggle. If you're fully convinced in your own mind that it's the right way to go, and you can help them see that and align those values, then you can make a sale. And
Mhm.
it's really that simple. So yeah, I mean, I hope I answered your question, but I'm thinking from the creative's perspective and also from the client's perspective, a subscription model applied to web design is the better way, in my opinion.
Mhm. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's super important is to set the expectations in the beginning as far as because if you think about it, all relationships that are the best are the ones that have lasted the longest, the ones that you're most comfortable with. And if you can emphasize from the beginning that, okay, we're doing this as a subscription model, not because we're trying to milk money out of you for eternity, but because we want to actually be your go-to partner. If you can frame yourself as someone that I'm not someone that's scared to hide behind, I'm not someone that's scared and just trying to build this and head out. Um, and I will actually stay here and help you integrate this into your business and teach you how to use it and just become your partner for that right now it might just be design, but moving forwards as your business grows, it could expand into more of a marketing role, which is what I've
Yeah,
seen. Because people once you do a good job for someone, they remember that, and they even if it's something totally unrelated, they'd rather have someone they can trust and come back to, even if it's something that's not even in the same field, because they would feel more comfortable taking that on. And I think posing it as setting the expectations in the beginning of a long-term relationship um, shows that you're committed, and it gets you off the flywheel, like you said, because I know when you're in this model and you have it established and you know that this is the way that you want to do all your projects, it you consider a lot more taking on a new one. And it kind of puts it into perspective like, okay, this is a new project. It's going to be a long term relationship. And if you frame every potential prospect, every lead with the proper cautionary idea that it's going to be a long term relationship, you think about it a lot more. It's not just a
yeah,
one and done scenario.
yeah.
And that avoids kind of the feast and famine, and it allows you to serve people better, and it doesn't have to be as many people because you have the people that you've worked with for years and years.
Yeah,
um
well, it's like when I first went full time into this, you know, my coach Josh Hall, he was shocked because he had me on his podcast to talk about this stuff, and he was
mhm,
shocked to hear that I went full time with like 11 total clients. And he was like, "What?
mhm,
What are you talking about? 11 clients? I have more than that now, but yeah, I had 11 clients
mhm,
at the beginning when I first went full time, and that is possible. And here's what's so cool: like you're talking about the sales pitch and everything. Like the more of your personality you can show, the more that will let people, people will let their guard down. And for example, the sales pitch, frankly, is so it's easy in the sense that, in the very normal sense that it's not hard. Now, it doesn't mean that everyone's going to become a customer. Of course, not everyone's going to
mhm,
become a customer. In fact, I actually did the numbers on that myself for the first time ever the other day, and it turns out I have a 70% proposal conversion rate. So I win about 7 out of 10 proposals. Okay, so nobody's
mhm.
perfect, and 7 out of 10 proposals is pretty good. I'll
Yeah, I
take
was
it,
gonna
right?
say it's a pretty good batting average right there. I'd take that.
Yeah, it's better than half. So I don't mind that at all. And um, here's the reality: like, yeah, people have questions and stuff, but truly the sales pitch part of a sales conversation that I have is kind of like this. Look, here's the honest reality. I want you to pay me forever, or for at least as long as you're in business, and I'm going to provide you with a fantastic website for as long as you're in business. I mean, that one saying right there encapsulates all the details of the model that I have. Right now, again, there's the nuances of my model. For example, we have a minimum 18-month commitment. And we'll rebuild the website. We do a refresh on the design every 3 years. So every 18 months, you can quit. Every 36 months, you can get a redesign. It's very so even that is very, very simple. But the way that I like to really just structure it is, yeah, you pay us for the lifetime of your business, and you always have a web partner in your corner and a fresh, optimized, up to date, well running website for $297 a month is where we typically start, and goes up from there. But yeah, so that's kind of the bottom line. And then yeah, if they have questions, well, what happens if I want to get out of it? Well, we do have an 18-month minimum, but after that 18 months, you're free to leave at any point in time. But for every 3 years you stick around, we refresh your website again. I mean, it's a no brainer because what I'm trying to help them understand is that their website is an integral part of the marketing of their business. And so it's not something that you just buy once and then let it go. No, it's something that you pay for every month. It's part of your business. It's an ongoing business expense. It's a service that you're paying for, just like landscaping or bookkeeping or anything else. And when you frame it that way, it helps clients understand that. And it really helps them see too that you're in it with them. They automatically feel like you don't have to convince them that you're on their team, that you're their partner, right? So many web designers say that, but they don't back it up with their business model. They say, yeah, we're in your corner. We're your partner. By the way, give us 15K now. And then maybe we'll answer the phone later. I hate to say that, but that's how a lot of web designers operate. And it's not good. Well, we're backing it up with our business model. So we don't have to we're not just saying that we're going to be in your corner. We're proving that we're going to be in your corner, because if we don't do the work, then you're not going to pay us, and we want to get paid. So we're going to do the work, right? So the business model, as simple as it sounds, itself reinforces so many of the claims that a creative person is going to want to make in the sales process, So, I mean, and I'll just underscore this point and then I'll turn it back to you. But like, man, isn't that a much easier sales process? Or just like a much easier sales angle as a creative. It's super laid back. Hey, we just want you to pay us every month, and then we're going to be in your corner every month, and you'll always have a fantastic website. I mean, that's a really easy sales pitch that anybody can make, especially the creative types who often don't like to engage in hardcore sales tactics. I mean, I don't know very many creatives who just enjoy reading sales books, right? Well, I just saved you a lot of sales books by saying, you just pay me every month forever, and you'll always have a great website. Boom. So,
well, I think that comes off. Yeah. Well, I think it's really, and every time that's what I always pitch now. And, in my business is long-term partnerships. And what I found is that generally people not only take that really well, but it's also like they're very impressed by that. And maybe part of it is because I'm young, but if you say, yeah, we're not looking to have a one and done transaction. We want to be your web design partner, your design partners for the long term. And any way we can do to make that work is, we're open to suggestions on, but this is our normal business model. And one thing I wanted to ask you was, would you ever charge like an upfront fee or like a setup fee for ongoing work, and then have the monthlies kind of after that?
We do that sometimes, yeah, and it's real case by case. Frankly, there are some websites that are harder to set up than others, and like a whole half of my business is dedicated to the niche of like membership and learning management sites. And the simple reality is I have a team. And those websites are, whereas the average website marketing, brochure website might be something like 15 to 35 hours to build. These other websites are more in the 50 to 100 hours to build. And so case by case, depending on what that looks like, we will charge a setup fee. And depending on the kind of client, we might use different language. We might call it, say, an initiation fee or a startup fee or something like that. And then we do the monthly. The key to that, though, where that gets trickier, is you don't want them to think that initial thing that they paid for is the design part. It's not that. It's literally for the purpose of, and you be as open in this in your sales conversations as you want to, but on my end, it's literally for the purpose of making sure my expenses are covered. So on most websites, because I have a team, I have a 1 to 3 month period where I'm not profitable on a project. And I know that's very scary, but again, this is part of the subscription mindset. And the way that you build this up is going to matter. But for me, I'm okay if I'm not profitable for the first 3 months on a project. Now, if I'm not profitable by month 4, I've done something incredibly wrong. Okay, incredibly wrong. Um, Ideally, month 1 or 2, I want to be profitable, but it's not always possible. And a caveat, a reason why I'm saying all this is because a lot of people who do the subscription model are use mostly templates. Well, we do have an option for that, a lower cost option for that, but that's not actually what we normally do. We normally sell custom websites on the subscription model, and so my
Mhm.
team actually has to custom build these websites, and it usually takes the first 2 to 3 months of payments, to actually cover my team's cost, and then from month 4 on, I am profitable. Okay. And in order to maintain that on some of these more complex sites, I do need to charge a setup fee to maintain that profitability because it just takes longer and it's more involved and requires more expertise and specialized knowledge to be able to set
Mhm.
those up. So if you're just doing brochure websites, I would advise you uh, to try not to charge a setup fee unless you absolutely have to. But if you are doing more complex things, I am absolutely cool with implementing a setup fee, initiation fee, whatever you want to call it. That helps you become profitable quicker and gets things set up. And then the kicker
Mhm.
is at that 3 month redesign period, I don't recharge that setup fee, right? It's just they
Mhm.
just keep paying monthly. So that setup fee is a
Yeah,
one time upfront cost to do the hard work of getting the e-commerce platform set up or the membership site set up, that stuff.
mhm. Yeah, that's the every 3 years. Yeah, so I yeah, I can see that for sure. And there's a lot of nuance that goes into that. I think depends kind of on, um I think a big part of that tails off the 18-month minimum. So if you didn't, I think that's important to have that in place or some kind of a minimum in place too,
Yeah.
because um and also you can generally, I imagine, on calls, you get a pretty good index of how they're reacting to this, right? If they think,
Yeah.
and it's usually if it's a sign too, it's another good thing about, pitching the long-term offer is that people aren't open to a long-term offer. It's a pretty good sign that they're not someone that's good to work with in the first place. Um, even
Yeah.
even for just a one-time project. So,
Hmm.
but yeah, no, that's a great point. And I think having some kind of a minimum in place like that, it toes the line pretty well of not devaluing the work. But I mean, if you yeah, I can see how you can kind of map that out a lot more into the future. If you're down for 18 months and they're paying you a certain number of every month, it allows you to be a lot more analytical and calculated rather than having to track, exact hours or trying to paying a one-off fee and then trying to backtrack how long it's going to take you when it could end up being, far longer, as I have learned. Um,
Yeah. And let me give you this. I know, so there are some colleagues and even students of mine who are doing a no contract version of this, right? I mean, they're basically
mhm,
taking the risk. The way that they look at it is they believe that by not asking for a contract, that lowers the barrier to entry. It gives more people the chance to say yes, such that even
mhm,
if a certain percentage does take advantage of it and say leave after the first 1 or 2 months, they believe that the number of people who come into the business as a result of not having that barrier to entry will vastly outweigh the number of people who cancel. And so
mhm,
that's a risk that they're taking. I have to admit, it seems to be working for them. So I don't want to throw too much shade here. It seems to be
mhm,
working. They seem to be onboarding at a fairly fast rate, and they get few cancellations. So they do have cancellations, but again, they're few and far between. So that's interesting. That I would certainly never do this on a more complex project. And in fact, the people that I'm referring to are doing very like what they're optimizing for is delivery speed. So one of the
mhm,
guys I recently interviewed him on my podcast. One of the guys that's doing this is basically saying, "We'll get you the website within 3 weeks, or your entire first year is free." That's their guarantee. So it's a pretty
mhm,
monster offer. And so they're optimizing for speed of setup time. If you can set
mhm,
up a website in 4 to 6 hours, it's not the end of the world. if they cancel after the first month or second month or
Yeah.
something like that. So they're leaning into that. Versus I'm not really taking that approach at all. But the other reason why I like the contract model is because, and it's not a rocket science name to understand, but the kind of income that I have is called contracted recurring. And this is one of there are multiple actual forms of recurring income. And one of the, actually, it's an ironically titled book to have this section in it. There's a book called Great CEOs Are Lazy. It's a fantastic book. But one of the sections in there talks about building recurring income, and it talks about the 5 types of recurring income. And I'm sure you could read other books and they would frame it differently. But contracted recurring is a really great form of recurring income because it demonstrates a guaranteed by contract certain number of payments. Now, of course, like anything else, like, once a client goes beyond that 18 months, it's month to month. But for at least that first 18-month period, you have contracts in place that show, okay, well, this money is guaranteed by the contract for the next 18 months. Now, of course, if a fireball, hits their business and they go out of business and they can't pay, okay, well, something, things could always happen, but for the most part, you're locked in by that contract. That's even attractive if you're trying to sell the business one day or something like that. A business will look at you and say, oh, well, they come with clients who are paying them on a recurring basis. And not only are they paying them on a recurring basis, but this client's got 6 months left. This one has 17 months left. This one has 13 months left. So they see guaranteed recurring income. And if you can also show them that your business is onboarding clients at a fairly steady rate through a series of systems and processes that aren't dependent on you, the owner, which, just full disclosure, I'm not there yet. I'm just saying that's another angle to it. If you can show that the business doesn't need you to consistently onboard clients, and that when the minute you hand over the business, you've got a slate of contracted recurring income, then investors are going to look at that and be willing to part with a lot more money for it, because it's that much more valuable business. You say, well, gosh, I'm at the beginning of this thing. I'm not thinking about selling my business. Fine. Okay. However, there's a great book that everyone should read by John Warrillow. It's called Built to Sell. And he tells you right up front in the book is that, okay, the point is not that you have to sell your business. Now, he's like, this is a book that will show you exactly how you need to structure your business if you want to sell it. That's perfectly fine. But the point is that when you build a business that's attractive to investors, you have built a solid business, right? So it's building the kind of business that is built to sell, or the kind of business that is built to run by itself so that you, as the owner and the entrepreneur, have more freedom and time and flexibility. Essentially, you're building a business that gives you options, versus what most creatives are doing is building a business that gives them a day job. Here's the reality of most of my days. Most of my days are very boring, but I like it that way. The same routine stuff is on my list, with exception of if I have some certain big project I'm working on. But for me, I pretty much get to wake up every day, and other than meetings that are already on the calendar or whatever, decide what I want to do. And some days my life is sitting literally in the recliner, looking at my iPad and like watching a YouTube video or reading a book, or like I'm doing some writing, or like what comes to mind. And my business is running itself. Again, that's now I am a creative, but I am not a creative for the sake of creating. Fundamentally, personally, I'm a business guy. So the point is, though, that I've created a life with options. If I wanted to do all the design work in my business, I could, and only do that, and let everybody else handle the development and everything. For me, I don't want to do any of it. So I let my team do the project management, design, and development. And I mostly focus on getting new clients in the door and building a more stable business for the long term. But that's just what I'm optimizing for. When you build a business with options in mind, you can build a business that allows you to do anything. And to kind of bring it back to where we started, is that contracted recurring income is a big part of it. So I think having that 18-month minimum, there's a lot of benefits to it beyond the immediately obvious.
Yeah, I think that's a great part of it. Is that it gives you the optionality, and that's something that if you're always hustling, you're always doing the same thing every day. A always churning, always, in a project, out of a project, sending an invoice, signing off the contract, then you don't really get that optionality to try and exert some kind of control. And that's why I think you see a lot of people, not just in our industry, but just any kind of service industry in general, is that if you don't really love the work and you're stuck in the same model, you don't have the optionality to pivot or try something new in your business, then you burn out and you stop doing it. And that's why
Oh, yeah.
you have to either get these processes in place. And I've heard this. I mean, Tim Ferriss says like the goal isn't to to record podcasts all day. The goal is to record a podcast for the rest of your life that you love doing and doesn't burn you out. Um,
Yeah.
so if you, I mean, some people, I think it takes a lot of self awareness, and that's something we talk about too. Is like you have to know what's important to you and be okay with the sunk costs and what you're missing out on. And
Yeah,
I mean,
here's a quote I heard recently. When your values are clear, your decisions are easy. So half the
mhm,
time that you expend all this mental energy making decisions from day to day, you can shortcut that by just taking the time. And some people don't do. Most people don't do this because they think it's too woo woo or whatever. But I would guarantee you, if you would just sit down for a day or a few hours or something and think hard and write down in your journal or whatever, think hard about what are the 3 to 5 things that you truly value in life, at least right now. Maybe you reevaluate this every 5 years or so. But for right now, who are you? Man, figure that out. Because if you know who you are, then what you do, 90% of those decisions are made for you already. 90%,
mhm,
I would argue, right? So do the work up front, which is going to be a lot easier in the long run than spinning your wheels. Because if you wake up every day not knowing who you are, then every decision has many answers. And then you have to think through every single decision. And it's taxing. It takes mental energy. It takes spiritual energy. It takes physical energy. It drains the heck out of you. But if you just decide, who am I? And then you allow that to inform the decisions that you make, then they're very, very easy. For example, I am I am someone who doesn't want a day job. I want businesses. And I said that plural. And so people would look at me, why don't you just focus? Why don't you just do one thing? Well, here's the problem with that. It's not who I am. I've tried. It's not who I am. What excites me is is building the thing, building the product, building the package that runs and
mhm,
consistently generates jobs, revenue, income for me and my family, um, and makes impact in the world. So
mhm,
it's the building of the things that excites me. It's not even the running of the things. It's the building of the things. My goal is for every business I have, and I've only full disclosure, I've only achieved this with one. That's not the point though. The point is that I know what I value. And what I value is for every business that I have to be entirely self-contained, where I just own it. I wake up every day and I frankly can look at bank accounts and profit and loss statements and use the numbers to determine where the business is. Okay, how many leads are we getting? How many sales are we making? Stuff like that. I want to be sitting so far up top that I'm just looking at the businesses that are working. Not everybody's like that. A lot of people would be very, very happy to just have a day job that they make their own hours and creative lifestyle. And say you're really passionate about design or you're really passionate about development. If you can afford to hire out all the parts that you don't like and just wake up and do what you want to do every single day, man, that's perfect. So if you're that way, be honest with yourself about that and start right now optimizing your business for it and start making those decisions. So let me just be real practical. Okay. I've already told you what I value. I've decided that I value not doing the work, but for creating the environment, the business, the platform, the team where the work gets done, right?
mhm.
Creating the result for the client is what I'm passionate about, not actually turning the buttons. So that led to me hiring a lot sooner than most people do and sacrificing personal income so that I could hire a team to do it. Now, if I wasn't paying a team, I would bring home every month considerably more money than I do. I'll just put it like that. Your biggest expense
Mhm.
when you build a team is a team.
Mhm.
But guess who would be sitting in front of this computer for 13 hours a day or more? Me. I don't value
Mhm.
that. I don't value that. I value being able to pick up, if me and my family want to, and drive 3 hours down the road and visit our friends in Georgia for the weekend or whatever, anytime we want to, working around school schedules and stuff. I value being able to do that more than I value that extra money that I'd be able to bring home. Because now, right now, I can do that and my business keeps going. I still make money. My client, nothing falls through the cracks, nothing falls behind. So that's just an example. And I've started building that a while ago and I've built it now. And now the current iteration of my team has been working together pretty consistently for about 2 years. And we're really hitting a stride. I mean, we're doing great work. And
Mhm.
so the point is not that that was the right move for you or for anybody else. The point is that I decided what I valued. And because of that, I sacrificed early, started hiring early, and creating the environment of the life that I wanted to have. And as long as your business is working for your life and your life is not working for your business, you're good to
Mhm.
go. So choose
Yeah.
what that is, decide who you are, and then your decisions all become easy.
Yeah, no, man, that's gold right there. I mean, I think no matter what industry, no matter what, I mean, we were really tactical in the beginning about talking about pricing and specific ways to, you know, frame your business. And the reality, it's all in service of making it what you want it to be. And there's a lot of different ways to, skin the cat or skin the horse, whatever the phrase is.
Yeah.
But I think
Yeah.
it's a good alignment to know that that's what we're all working towards, and that's what people like you and Josh. I mean, I think that's what you guys' mission is, to just help people find what that is for them, and it looks different for everybody. And I think I fall very closely on the spectrum to you, is that like you started doing the thing, you started being creative, you started the building. That's what got you all the technical knowledge of how to get started in the business, and that gave you the insight that it could be something bigger than just you. And then you start to kind of learn as you go how the world works, how money works, how pricing works, and what will you find to
Mhm.
be the most successful. And you kind of stack these small tidbits of knowledge. You reach out, you ask people for questions, you get more input and feedback. What you're doing in your own business, what is working, what isn't working, and then you start to slowly see the parts of your day that you do and don't enjoy. And you have to kind of have those moments where you zoom out a little bit and are honest with yourself, like, okay, what were the days that I wasn't the most energized? Like, I feel like today felt like a job. And what did I do today,
Yeah.
and what caused those emotions, and what parts of my day did I feel the most alive, did I feel the most energized by? And for me personally, it's become really clear ever since leaving and doing this business full time. It is, and I think part of it too is still the newness of it. It's only been about 4 or 5 months now, but the novelty of just the freedom is something that I don't think I'll ever wear off. And I think about where I was, not that long ago. I think where a lot of creatives are who don't do their own thing yet is, and you are stuck in the same place. And there's absolutely nothing wrong with that if you're living according to your values, like you caveated earlier. Um,
Yeah.
and if you're working really hard for someone else, and someone else is getting the benefit of your work, then if you're not just someone who enjoys the work for the sake of it, then you're not living according to your values. You're conflicting, that conflicting sort of narrative that plays in your head. Like, I was always thinking, what if I was the one that I was seeing how much this company is making? Like, what would if I was the one that was benefiting from all of this? And I'm sure that would come with sacrifices. I'm sure that would come with a lot of learning and a lot of scrapes along the way, and it has. But eventually you find ways and to make your business what you want it to be, and it's a long journey. And that was a little bit of a tangent, but I think when it comes down to the more practical side of it, that's what the the 300-foot view of all of this is okay. We have these pricing models that allow us the optionality to, you know, do more of what we like doing, and ultimately, live more of the life that I think we want to live. Um,
Yeah.
so that's
Yeah.
why I really appreciate that.
Yeah, no, and look, I would say, in terms of again the practical implementation of this, what's another path that you could go? Well, I mean, let's say that you want the freedom of being a business owner, but you just really love doing the work, and you could structure it in such a way where like you had to, so you could take on a business partner. You could look around for a business partner who was really good at sales and client development and the actual running of the business, and you be the main person in charge of doing the work. And then if you're doing the work in the very beginning, that's fine. Eventually, over time, you could start hiring out different pieces of it or even all of it. But to start with, you split the business 50-50. They do the business development and running the business, and you do the delivery. Okay, that's a perfectly acceptable way to go that works for a lot of people, that is formed out of the value of, you know what, I want the freedom, but I still love being the one doing the work. Now you can
Mhm,
have both. You can have both.
mhm,
Because here is the reality. If you don't do that, of being an entrepreneur. And there's a fantastic book that every you have to read it. Every business owner should read The E-Myth Revisited by Michael
mhm,
Gerber.
mhm,
Um, if you don't read that book, you're doing yourself a tremendous disservice. The reason why is because you don't understand business. I'm just going to
mhm,
come out on a limb and say 99% of creative people who don't read that book don't actually understand what business is about. And this, I know there's a lot more books on business than that one, but I'm telling you, you won't get it until you read that book. That's been my experience and the experience of many others. And
mhm,
the reality is this: unless you find somebody else in the business who is going to take responsibility for the business stuff of running a business, it's you. It's you. You have to do it. As a business owner, if that's what you want to do, you do not have a choice but to learn the business side of it. And that what that means is that you are going to have an outsized proportion of your time working on business stuff instead of creative stuff. And so don't be the plumber who goes out and strikes out on his own because he hears how much more money he could make and then realizes that he doesn't know how to run a business and hates running a business and actually is just pretty satisfied making decent money as a plumber working for somebody else. Do white label work as a creative, work for an agency. Don't Entrepreneurship is sexy these days and it used to not be, but it's not for everybody. And so realize that if you value freedom, but you value doing the work just as much, then you're going to have to create a scenario where some of the business side of things could be alleviated. And again, I'm all about being super practical. So what's another way that could translate? Well, for me, I'm more into the business side. So the first person I hired was a web developer, and then I hired a project manager, and then I hired a designer. Okay. That's how I went. If you are a creative person, then your first hire is probably an admin person, somebody to take over all the client communication, answering emails, scheduling, all of that stuff. You're going to hire an admin person. Then you're going to probably hire a project manager. And maybe you eventually even get to the place where you can hire, you're still the only business owner, but you can even maybe even hire a CEO of your business, right? And so
mhm,
you are the owner and a worker in your business. Maybe you lead the creative team, but you hire a CEO and or a COO, however you want to think about it. But think about like Elon Musk and SpaceX. I know that's a very far away from a creative example, but go with me here. That Susan lady, whatever her name is, she's either the CEO or COO. I can't remember. They've been working together for over 20 years, and um, Elon Musk is very involved. He's the owner. Well, it's a public company, but he has lots of ownership share in the business, and he is like at the top most level. But also, he's an engineer. He works in the business. But as far as making the business deals, running the operations, and all that, that part is done by somebody who works for him, right? And so you can even create that scenario. So there's no one right way to do it. It's a matter of which is the right way for you. But I'm just trying to help you understand how some of the different ways of the different decisions you can make depending on what you value and how that might practically work out to the first people that you hire, or and if you take on business partners and what kind of business partners you take on. A guy found me through YouTube. We've been working together for a few months now, and it was the opposite scenario. He's like, man, you do web design. You've got this awesome delivery and development team. He's like, I'm a sales guy. I do business development. That's what I know how to do. Could we work together? So we've created the opposite scenario where we've kind of got this joint venture, and he's going out and selling web design projects and we're fulfilling on the back end. So that's just another
mhm,
whole way that you can structure things. And so it's business is itself a creative endeavor. And if you can learn to think about the business, um, uh, uh, in terms of being creative and structuring deals, and I know we're going off on a tangent here, but I can't help it.
Mhm. Not
Like
at
one
all.
of the things that I love doing is not being short sighted, right? How many? I'll just give you the exact scenario that's going on right now, and this is a pending thing. So literally, like this is not even signed yet. It could totally fall apart, but like here's something that's happening right now. I advertise at my local radio station. I pay money to be on the radio. I have ads there, and also I get to be on the air a few times a month during our morning show, prime time. And I pay money for this. It's decent money that I paid for this every month. And they are working on a new project. They want to basically become the news source for our area, the authoritative news source for our area, because there's not really a good one right now. And what they're doing is asking me, hey, what's it going to cost to build a website for this? Okay. Well, I could just say, oh, it's going to cost this and be done with it. Instead, I'm negotiating a deal. I'm negotiating my radio time for free, exclusive advertising rights on the whole network, and a
Mhm.
percentage of ad share on the revenue. Promise, if
Mhm.
that deal goes through, I'm going to make a lot more money and have a lot more impact in my community because I'll get to help build this thing than I would if I had just said, oh, yeah, it'll cost this much. So now I get
Mhm.
free advertising, prominent advertising, and a percentage of the revenue share.
Yeah.
And it's only going to cost me the first couple months of like, okay, so my guess is that what I pay right now in radio advertising is roughly going to be my expenses for my team to build the website for the first couple months.
Mhm.
So you see, I've now what I've done is I've used my creativity to structure a business arrangement that is going to make a lot more financial sense for my company. And but guess what? Guess what? It makes a lot more financial sense for them too, right?
Mhm.
It's an
Right.
incentive for them because they don't have to pay a whole bunch of money. Yes, they lose one line item on a different business because I'm not paying for their advertising revenue anymore.
Mhm.
But they get me helping them grow this thing. Whereas otherwise they would have just been paying me to provide a website service, right? So they don't actually have to pay out of pocket huge setup fees or anything like that. So it's even better for them, right? So we're doing more of a barter thing, but then there's still a profit engine for me on the back end and a huge visibility opportunity. So it's a
Yeah.
win-win for everybody because they don't have to pay anything up front. They only pay out money to me when they take on a new advertiser. Boom,
Mhm.
right? Fantastic.
Yeah.
But way better for me. I'm going to make a lot more money in the long run if this goes through and get free advertising. I
Yeah,
mean,
man. I
that's
love
the kind of
yeah.
creativity you can apply to business when you start thinking about the business itself as a creative product.
Yeah, and I love that. I love that spin on it, and I think it's so easy to get caught up in like when you're like it's so much easy to get us caught up in the nuance of like what you charge, and that's what a lot of topics in the industry are now is like what are the current rates, like what is your hourly rate, what is um do you track your
Yeah.
time, how do you do that? It's easy to get caught in the nuance of that when in reality one of the small levers you can pull might make a much bigger difference to all these factors that kind of makes them irrelevant. So I
Yeah.
really something I admire about you is your perspective on how you kind of zoom out and see the bigger picture of these things and kind of structure things creatively. And I think you're a bit of a contrarian yourself, Steve. Is that like you kind of you go your own way, and I mean you have the confidence in yourself to back it up too. Because I think something
Yeah.
like even in my career that I've struggled with a little bit is just going against the grain. And it's, I mean, it's, I know it's always human nature to kind of say, like, this is a traditional path. You have to have this number of clients before you leave your full time job. You have to, be doing things this way. Um, n- Everything very traditional. And I think there's value to learning the basics, especially when you're first starting, because we kind of talked about before we started recording, you don't really know what success looks like. It's a lot easier to default to the yes. Um, than it is to weed anything out. So, but yeah, no, I and that's something that I had saw in myself was that I'm always kind of doing these things that I see other people doing and not really adding my, own spin on it. Because, I think we could all do a little bit better of giving ourselves a little bit of credit. That's what I was going to say to
Yeah.
you earlier too. Is that, I mean, you said you weren't a multimillionaire or you weren't made of money, but I mean, if you can make this business something that you can come back to every day that you enjoy doing, and as builders, if it's something that you can create and that you structure in your own way, I can think of a better way to live is building this business to doing things that you love to do, that, check all the boxes that get the housekeeping out of the way with the bills and finances, and also just excite me. Like right now, I'm so excited to get back to work. To just, that's how, like, podcasting in general always excites me to get back to work because I learn all these things, and I know that I can apply my own spin to them now and start to make the business what I want it to be more. So
Yeah.
that's the biggest thing I'm
Amen.
learning from you in particular. So I really appreciate that, man.
Of course. Absolutely.
Mm. So one thing I wanted to ask you, this will be our last kind of topic here, but what is one thing that creatives can take away from like this interview, this conversation, they can apply maybe to their next sales pitch, to their next engagement, whether it's a certain pricing model we talked about. What's just one thing they can kind of take away and implement to their next project, that will kind of help them see the business, appreciate the business side of the creative industry a bit more, and how will have them, tap into some of the benefits we're talking about.
That's a really good question. I have no idea if I'm going to give you a entirely satisfactory answer, but what I'm going to give you is the answer that I feel like most people are missing, and that is execution trumps theory all the
Mm,
time, every time. I mentioned to you a little bit before, and I won't go too deep into this because, frankly, most it's private information. But like one of the things that I'm seeing when I'm working with my students is um, a lot of people are learning what to do, but they're not doing it. And if you learn what to do, but don't do it, it doesn't really matter.
mm,
And one of the issues with information is there's lots of it out there right now, and lots of it is contradictory. And most people's brains are not good at dealing with contradictory information. So actually one thing I want to leave you with is a book recommendation.
mm.
And that is for a new book that just came out. I haven't even finished reading it yet. By Alan Dibb, and it's called Lean Marketing. And so far, and when I say this, you should know that I have read a lot of marketing books. So far, this is probably the best marketing book I've ever read.
Wow.
Um, that's high praise coming from me. Probably now,
Mm,
it's not that it's the one marketing book that's gonna teach you everything you need to know. But so far, and I'm telling you, I'm only a few chapters in. So far, what he appears to have done is taken the last 120 years ish of marketing wisdom and compressed that into something that's not only understandable and very practical for almost any business to do, but he does it in such a way that he reconciles the tension between the big camps in marketing, which was very impressive to me that he's doing this.
mm,
Because if you know anything about marketing, um, it's fractured. There's guys on the brand and advertising side, and there's guys on the direct response side, right? And so the brand and advertising side is, TV commercials, billboards, um, radio ads, things like that are more just like they try to get you to feel something. The problem with this is it's very expensive and it takes a very long time to work, and
mm,
most people can spend more money than you and win at that game. On the direct response side, this is the side that's more so categorized or characterized, I should say, by intense copywriting, big, ugly headlines, long sales pages, and the immediacy of response, the urgency of responding to that ad right then to do something, and then being able to intensely track and measure that. Put $1 into the system and get $3 back out. So those are the
mm,
two camps of marketing. And most of my time in business has honestly been a lot of waffling back and forth because I believe in the power of both. But there's not really anyone, Russell Brunson does this okay, but there's not really anyone who has truly mastered the working those two things in together. And I think Alan Dibb in this book has done that. And I think, and I haven't even really gotten to the parts that really dig into all that, but even just the way that he set the book up and everything he's talking about so far, it's the bare necessities. For example, he gives you like, he talks about the fact the whole first chapter in the book is about choosing your target market. Well, that's nothing new. Everybody, it's like most business people talk about how to choose a target market or that you need to choose a target market. But I have not read out of all the books, and I've read books specifically on that subject that have not been as helpful as the first chapter in this book that just talks through all the different ways. For example, he talks about 7 different ways that you can niche down. And he talks so practically about the fact that if you take and combine those 7 different ways, that's how you can find a great niche. And it's like, oh my goodness, this makes so much sense, but no one's ever explained it this clearly before. The whole book is like that so far. So Lean Marketing by Alan Dibb is going to be a great recommendation that I want to leave you with that is going to help you get off the ground with this thing. Because ultimately, if you don't learn how to market your business, you don't have a business. Another big secret here of any company, but especially creative companies like yours and mine, is that you have to become just as obsessed with the business of the business than with the actual delivery in the business, right? You have to be just as obsessed with the marketing. You're actually not in the web design business. You're in the marketing of the web design business or the marketing of the graphic design business. That's actually what you do if you're going to be a business owner. And so the way that he likes to put it in the book is getting visibility on the merits. It's like if everything was merit based, the highest paid people in our society would be doctors, or not doctors, but school teachers and firefighters. Unfortunately, that's not the reality. So you don't necessarily get it based just on merit. He says you get what you negotiate. And that makes a ton of sense to me and resonated with me deeply. And the idea there is that you can tap into existing demand and build a business for yourself that does very, very well if you get the marketing side of things right and learn that, because it will lead to so many more opportunities. So be a person that takes action. And that's what led me to wanting to recommend Lean Marketing, because it is a book that is filled with practical, like, do this now stuff that will really help you accelerate your business, especially if you're in those early stages and trying to figure out what you need to do to get moving. So be a person who takes action. Don't just listen to this podcast and say, oh, that was a great podcast. Listen to it again, take notes, and choose 1 to 3 things that you're going to do after hearing this podcast that are going to make a difference in your business. Set a reminder on your calendar to check with yourself in 1 month to see how that went and if it moved the needle. So that's what I think I would leave you with.
Hell yeah, man. Dude, that was awesome. You left with a lot of recommendations, a lot of tools and resources. And I mean, personally, selfishly, I don't have a ton of creative friends I can talk business with like this. So I appreciate you filling that void for me and teaching me a lot in the process. So,
Sure, man. My pleasure.
super appreciate your time today. You have a ton of awesome recommendations. It's going to be a long show notes section, but tell me where people can find you, everything about scripture, web design, podcast, website, membership courses, all these things. And yeah, give us the rundown.
Sure. So I find that most podcast listeners are podcast listeners. So if you listen to this
call me out like
podcast,
that.
if you listen to this podcast, there's a good chance that my podcast will resonate with you. So that's just a subscription web design podcast. And then I have right now, and I was actually telling Andy before the conversation that there's a few different things that we're working on. But right now, the 2 primary ways to engage with us are to get either my course, if you're interested in just like a one-time thing to get the information, which you can find at steveschramm.co, and it's the Getting Started with Subscription Web Design course. And you can go there and grab that. And then if you're interested in more hands-on help, you get the course with it, but also our group coaching program, which lives at subscriptionwebdesign.com. You can go there and not only get the course material, but then every couple weeks, we're going to have a group coaching call and we'll talk through the current challenges that you're working through in your business. And we have a good time on that. And I'll just say this is that now would be the time to get in on that, because we are working on some things that to take that to the next level that I think will be cool and beneficial. And there's going to be some really cool stuff there for people who are joined up now. So anyway, that's what I had to leave you with on that. So steveschramm.co or subscriptionwebdesign.com. And at the very least, if you just want to learn as much as you can for free, I'm showing up every week on the Subscription Web Design podcast, which you can find on YouTube or any podcast player that you have, and be honored for you to become a listener.
Yeah, man. And we'll link. We mentioned 2 or 3 episodes of that today, so be sure to link that below as well. But dude, super grateful for your time again, man. Like I said, I really look up to you and everyone else in pro, and I kind of see you as one of the founding fathers of your kind of own corner of the web design industry. So yeah, really look up to you, and I think people get a lot of value out of this chat. So
thank you so much, man. I appreciate the invite. It's been a pleasure for me. Let's do it again.
Yeah, can't wait for round 2, man.